People who note my hard work are aware that I consider it an open question whether the international oligarchs cahooted on AIDS and COVID and set up the Ukraine as a diversion. Putting that aside, I consider that an open question. Putting that aside, I'd like to express my reservations concerning the total approval of the United States and our allies for arming the Ukrainians to the teeth rather than negotiate and consider Russia's position of creating a fortification in the Russian Federation against NATO expansion, about which they were lied to, and questions the serious nature of what was being done to the Russian people in Donbass. I've heard it bragged about by Ukrainians since the war, not before the war. I don't know. It was mysterious what happened before the war. Since the war, I've heard it bragged about that Russian language is suppressed. It may have been going on before the war, too. I also know there are serious questions about Maidan and the Orange Revolution, whether it was a coup d'etat. Russia was being Russia when they invaded Crimea. We all wish that things were better between the US and Russia. But why aren't they better? One reason they aren't better is because Clinton lied about the expansion of NATO, period. There's nothing to discuss about that. One can argue, and it seems to me effectively argue, and I feel it highly likely that the way that the Biden administration is capitalizing on the situation, this tragedy, this horrifying tragedy for everyone concerned, signifies what Russia is afraid of, signifies what they were planning to do anyway, which was to encroach on, surround, and push towards Russia and build an iron fortress against Russia in the Ukraine. I don't think it was called for. From the look of it, when I look at what happened in Maidan in the Orange Revolution, it wasn't really clear who was right and who was wrong. One of the strange things that I see is the role of Paul Manafort, who was a friend of Putin, yet rallying the people who were anti Putin. So I don't think we have a full explanation for what was really going on there. And under the circumstances, given that we are at the brink of the Third World War, the sensible thing to do is to freeze, accept some degree of Russian Federation consolidation, and allow for the mystery to be evaluated in earnest as to what exactly has been going on since we agreed not to expand NATO, and find out how much we have neglected when it comes to this strange habit of ignoring an extremist faction that is shooting at both sides. What gives? That's a very serious development. The mystery of Yoyimbo, of an incendiary, provocative extremist wing shooting both sides, is something I'm seeing in the United States. They're trying to craft conflict in the United States by inciting two sides. It's called Yoyimbo. I'm not saying that I believe that the oligarchs of Russia are entirely innocent of this, the oligarchs of the Ukraine are entirely innocent of this, and that it's all the US is doing. I think a substantial number of people in the United States are practicing intentional ignorance about it. They refuse to look at the police department as one of them. The police department refused to regard many of the mysterious exchanges that have gone on as double homicide activities by a branch of Yoyimbo extremism. They refused to do it. That is intentional ignorance. My view is I believe there should be a ceasefire. I believe that Russia has substantial reasons to advance the narrative that they have advanced to protect Russian speaking people in the Russian Federation, seemingly at least. And I don't think that the idea that they don't has been effectively countered by the idea that we are supporting an invaded nation against invasion. I do believe that one of the things that provoked this was a desire to bring about a challenge to diplomacy as such from the West. Somebody like me who believes in diplomacy and peace has been robbed of every single thing that makes life comfortable and worth living: the safety of my friends, the property, the career that I hope for, my hearing, my, my freedom of associations, and now they want my license to speak. I do not know the answer to what's going on in the Ukraine, but I do know that it is an arbitrary parameter being forced on me as an armchair editorialist. It's being forced on me. And they're forcing a loyalty test from a country from whom we are not even an ally of on paper, as though we are. And you expect Russia to interpret that as us fulfilling our agreement not to expand NATO? It doesn't make any sense. When Putin says they must think we're stupid, he's speaking the truth. My disagreement with Putin and the Russian leadership is that I feel very strongly that the international community, as witnesses, would have bargained on Russia's behalf to protect Russia if they had just simply stated their concerns and come forward with them forcefully at the UN and through a legacy like Mikhail Gorbachev's relationship with Václav Havel, build on the Velvet Revolution from within Russia. I believe that the idea of military superiority and dominance is something that feeds into what the West has done illegally and immorally in places like Iraq and Vietnam. I think reason, calm, understanding, and diplomacy can win out in the end against human aggression and human hostility. But that does not mean that we should intentionally render ourselves pliable to manipulations from a parameter that came from a mysterious era, mysterious ideas, mysterious concerns, mysterious issues. Ukraine and Zelensky came up with Trump. Biden and his son were mixed up in the Ukraine. There were property deals being pulled. The Ukraine is notoriously corrupt. People have had to buy property twice to secure actual ownership. There's all sorts of complaints from the Ukrainian people themselves about how the government operates in the Ukraine. And yet we're going in there like a flamethrower because it makes a few honchos of the Greg Carl direction, David Petraeus, puff themselves up and say, Russia is aloof, and what's the point of this kind of mentality? It doesn't follow from the idea that the Ukraine wasn't an era where we were expanding NATO. It follows from the idea that we're lying about the expansion of NATO and the intentions and the potential. Here's the bottom line: whatever Putin says or disagrees with, this comes from me. It comes from my heart. We had supposedly a moment where we were the only superpower. Did we behave intelligently as the world's policemen? Did we go in and say we're going to be super helpful now that we don't have the problem of a confrontation with someone we view as an oppressor? We're going to drop the warlord mentality and start being mankind's best friend. No, we didn't. We had gibbering, giggly people like Tony Blair and George Bush looking for fights anywhere they could find them and then kicking people in the face while they were down. I don't see what Russia's doing as some noble knight to the rescue of the world's afflicted the way Putin puts himself forward as. And I am mortified by what has been done to the Ukrainian people. But I think the truth is that the leadership of America couldn't care less about the Ukrainian people. And what we should be doing is negotiating a freeze and bring a stop to it. Russia has made clear why they did it and where they want to maintain the Russian Federation and why. And we just need to focus on that and try to bring us back to the issues that matter, which is cooperation, resolution, and end of paranoia and addressing the climate change issue. That's my opinion. Okay, don't free phrase that in mania as a lack of moral sympathy for the Ukrainian people. I understand that they're going to come jumping out of hats as hatters saying, you wouldn't if it was you, the tyranny, this mayhem that we're winning. Why would you want to pull the plug on us while we're winning, and so on and so forth? What I'm hearing is that the Russian Federation wants to protect the Russian people, and that's what they're doing. That's what I'm hearing. And it's mysterious otherwise. I found the whole thing heartrending. And I think it's going to have permanent repercussions on Russia's reputation that this was allowed to happen, but not at the price of censoring their point of view. They do have a point of view, and it's not exotic. They saw, for false reasons, the invasion of Iraq, for false reasons, the decimation of Vietnam. And they saw us lie about expansion of NATO and exploit the Ukrainian tragedy for our own barbaric reasons. I don't hear threats to go nuclear from anything other from the fact that the Russians are saying that the areas where the Russian people want to be ruled by Russia are part of the Russian Federation, and that's how it's going to go. I don't have any say in the matter. It's not my precinct. That's my primary point. The Ukraine parameter is something that has nothing to do with my registration at the post office when I turned 18. We were not reasonably allied to them as members of NATO. They're a friendly European nation. But the act of shooting both sides during the revolution was not a friendly act. And it's going on in the United States now, too. And I don't think Russia is behind that at all. I think we're dealing with a cult of extremists that we refuse to call by a cult of extremists. Now, it's an open question whether there are people behind the scenes in Russia who are doing this with people who are behind the scenes in the United States. It's an open question for me. But I do not believe that anything is to be gained from making the battlefield any more remorseless than it already is. I believe we should cease fire and stop it for the sake of the people who are being killed, injured for life, frightened out of their wits. And because of the spread of mania in the United States, I insist that you understand my message is to stop the mania. Don't use the Ukraine for mania of censorship of opinions, either here or in the international community. I've seen recently that this nonviolent stuff will get you killed on YouTube. There's a special editorial about that from somebody who disbelieves it. I do not know, having never done the research, how many people who believe in nonviolence suffer predatory acts as compared to the number of people who believe in violence who suffer tragedy. So I don't want to get into that. But I know plenty of sensible, nonviolent religious people who live out their lives in dignity and as dignified members of the American Commonwealth. We don't need the locomania from the National Rifle Association saying if you don't believe in violence, you'll get yours at everybody's window.